Falconcast, the fastest growing podcast in the history of the known universe. And we're going to have a fun show for you today. Joe Spano is going to join me. Tracy C, SEC Tracy with the boobs will join me in a little bit. And we'll see who else drops in as we move along. I hope everyone had an awesome New Year's Eve, an awesome New Year's. I honestly think today should also be a holiday because now I don't do this anymore because I'm old. But it used to be you'd go out on New Year's Eve, you sleep in, and then you watch football all day and do black-eyed peas and brisket or whatever and get drunk again. So that's 2 days. So hopefully everybody is over that and is feeling pretty good. And I hope you all had a great betting weekend. I did pretty well. The big one that AJ and I talked about was Oregon over Liberty. And I hammered that one for as much as they would let me bet. So that was a good one. And obviously, we'll talk about the semifinal games. They both lived up to it. And a lot of interesting stuff going on in the NFL. And we will get to all that. But I want to thank everyone who has supported the show. And continue to do so, please. We're going to have a great year in 2024. But Mark, B. Hannon, Chase, Day One Donna, Todd S., Chris Perez, anything you want to do to help the show is great, but we're going to expand. We've got so much cool stuff going on. Welcome in Said Boss. Welcome in Flea. And I had a really quiet New Year's Eve and New Year's. New Year's Eve, went over and watched the Texans game and then just went home and stayed home all night and chilled. And then yesterday was another quiet day at home, except for my neighbor Steven came over with a bottle of whiskey, and so we watched the games at my place and just had a good time. And a lot of great stuff. Welcome in Smokey. And, just nice, quiet old man crap. But it was probably for the best. I got invited to a couple New Year's Eve parties. I'm just like, I think I'm just going to stay at the house and watch fireworks from my balcony. So, sports to all of you. And we are at Midtown Bar and Grill, 415 West Gray. Great place. They serve breakfast all day. I just had a breakfast taco. How about that? And the food's fantastic. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up here. We're going to be doing the show here every Monday. Obviously, we didn't do it yesterday because of the holiday. But we'll be here every Monday for a while. And Tommy and his staff are fantastic. It's a great place to drop by and say hello. Said Boss said go blue, and the Lions got cheated. Yeah, we'll get to both of those. Don't worry. That Lions game was just bizarre, but bacon with a side of bacon. Yeah, these are actually sausage breakfast tacos that I was eating. All right, so we're gonna bring in, without further ado, my good friend who I know watched all the football too because we were talking about it. Mafia Joe Spano in the house. What's up, brother?
What's up, Goomba?
Not a damn thing, man. Just really enjoyed all the sport this weekend, and you know what? I mean, the football was so good, I didn't get to watch the Winter Classic, so I had to watch highlights. But let's start off with college football because I think with the two semifinals, we had two of the best semifinals we've ever had. Both of them come down to the last play, and I think we had the right teams, and I think the right teams won because I think both Michigan and Washington really were the better teams with the exception of some special teams play.
It's hard to disagree with you. They were certainly the more consistent teams. You look at both Alabama and Texas, and they went through cold spells that really could have doomed them. And it ended up dooming them in the end, but really could have made it where these games weren't as close as they were. And I think for Alabama, they were fortunate that while they weren't playing well and they were squandering the few opportunities they had, that Michigan wasn't truly taking advantage of it. And as you said, special teams issues and some different things. And then kind of the same thing with Washington and Texas. It was a very even, it was a fairly even first half where Texas benefits from the Washington muff on the punt. But then it's the Washington defense that dominates much of the second half before Texas can really get it together late and make it a little too close for comfort down the stretch. But when you look at these games, the two teams that played better over the course of the entire game ended up winning. They ended up winning in close, exciting fashion, but they ended up winning.
Yeah, and of course, you see a lot of, and Michael Penix was fantastic in that game, and you saw a lot of, oh, they should wait for after the playoffs to give the Heisman. It's like that. Somebody says that every year, and I thought that Penix was fantastic in that game. The Muhammad, who's one of my favorite corners, blew that one coverage on that last drive, and that was a little bit surprising. But I still don't understand how receivers can get behind cornerbacks in that situation. You've got to have safety help over the top. You've got to have an umbrella. But it happens every year in almost multiple times a year.
Well, it consistently comes down to defensive coordinators seemingly unaware of the situation they're in. I mean, I'm not saying that you've got to play this passive prevent defense because, as we both know, what do we say about prevent defense? The thing it prevents you from doing is winning games. But you still have to be smart, and you have to have safety help over the top. And you can't put yourself in a position to let up those kind of huge chunk plays, because in situations like that, the clock is your friend, and so is the distance. They're gonna run out of time before they get the yardage or make a mistake. So keep it in front of you on some level. That's important. Knowing situations, and I really kind of think a lot of times these coaches who just, well, this is what I do, and I don't change for anybody regardless of the situation. I think a lot of times that's where they get themselves in trouble.
Yeah, and I think the end of game play calling in a couple instances. And it wound up not biting Texas because they had a second left. But that little swing pass where Ewers almost gets sacked, the game's over right there. If he catches the ball, the game's over. And so I thought that was a poor play call. And then in the end, I think the cornerback for Washington just made a fantastic play on the last play of the game. So we got to be treated to that. So sometimes the dumb coaching is useful. I don't know what that play call was at the end of the Alabama game in overtime. I mean, a lot went wrong. The snap was low. He tripped over his offensive lineman. But you're running right at the teeth of the strength of the Michigan defense with your season on the line.
I mean, what do they always say? It's fourth down. It's for all the marbles. You get this touchdown, you can stay alive. You don't get this touchdown, you're going home in the ultimate way. So what do they always say? Here's where you go to the best play on your play chart. You're going to tell me a quarterback draw on 4th and 3 was the best thing on their play chart? I find that hard to believe. I just, you've got a quarterback that can win with his legs and his arm. Maybe you get him on the edge, on the perimeter, and force that defense into defending both run and pass and put them in a position, put the defense in peril where whatever decision they make, it's the wrong decision. You defend the pass, I'll jog to the pylon, score the touchdown, we stay alive. If you defend the run, I'm just going to throw a pass into the corner of the end zone for a touchdown. That's what they didn't do in this situation. And, very disappointing play call from Tommy Rees.
Well, and I was also want to compliment some of the play calling from going back to Michigan. That last touchdown was just a brilliant little play call. And then, of course, Corum takes over in overtime. But I'm excited about this matchup. Washington looks like the team that we saw early in the season. And they, when they were playing good defense and their offense was unstoppable. And they've got a really good offensive line, which they're going to need against Michigan because that Michigan front is a terror. But the cornerbacks are solid, and they can score with anybody. So I'm excited to see what they can do. I'm kind of still leaning Michigan right now. I just think, especially now that their quarterback looks like he's healthy, I think they'll be able to keep up with Washington. But I mean, I got a lot more studying to do before we get there, but that's my initial thought.
I think one of the keys here is going to be the health of Dylan Johnson. Yes, Michael Penix, the Washington quarterback, was incredible. Made throws at every level. He did everything well. He was remarkable. But Dylan Johnson is the engine that makes that running game go. And against a defense as imposing as Michigan's, you're going to have some balance just to keep you honest. And again, a lot of people get this mistaken perception with balance that, oh, you have to have a great running game. No, you don't have to run it for a lot of yards. You just got to keep the defense honest where, they're still respecting that run enough to defend it. It will open up the pass game. Without Dylan Johnson in the lineup, who's an explosive, dynamic back for Washington, I think that's something that can't be overlooked. His health leading up to game time is going to be a key. If he can go, the factor that he plays in the running game and the role he plays in the passing game could just tilt this thing Washington's way, because as good as Michigan is, when Washington's clicking on all cylinders, I don't know that Michigan keep up with this offense. I just don't know.
It should be exciting. I mean, I really do think, though, that for all the talk about, I don't think even if Florida State were 100% with their guys, they would have been able to beat any of these teams that we saw yesterday. But, that's hindsight, but it's also one where people made a big deal out of everything. So I think we got the – we've never seen semifinals this good. So let's just pat them on the back and say they got it right.
Well, you've certainly never seen two in the same year this good.
Right.
We've seen a semifinal. Usually when we get one this good, the other one's a blowout and it's over at halftime. Not the case here. Two tremendous games. And as far as Florida State, what was the committee to do? I mean, we saw what we needed to see out of the young quarterback. It just wasn't working for Florida State. They weren't one of the four best teams in college football at that point. With a 12-team playoff, they get in, they get a chance to prove it. But the committee's job is to pick the best four teams at that time. And, well, Florida State wasn't with one of the best four without their quarterback. That's just the way it is. There's no other way to say it. And I'm glad they didn't pick Florida State, because against any of these teams, they were not going to be competitive. You would have had that blowout at halftime. The game would have been over.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'm not saying that because Georgia treated him like Ed Norton in the shower in American History X, but because all year I thought, they got the right teams, and I think you can make a case for Georgia actually, but otherwise, I mean, there's just not much of an argument to be had, and I think we're gonna have a great championship game. Flea wants to know what are the odds Penix breaks before the end of next Monday's game. He is going to take some shots. Now he took some shots against Texas, and Michigan will get to him, but he's been pretty durable all year. And man, that was just as good a performance as you could ask for. And Flea also asks, where does this phrase "all the marbles" come from? We all say it. They're marbles. Who wants all the marbles? I think it goes back to way before me even. Kids used to play a marbles game, and the idea was to get all of the marbles. Like you knock a marble off the little circle, and then you collect it. So I'm guessing that's where it came from, but I don't really know. And then Chuck Norris says Florida State should have been in the Pop-Tart Bowl. Ooh. You know what? All right, just a couple on these other games. I really I enjoyed the LSU-Wisconsin game. I think LSU's quarterback looked like it got better as the game went on. And that was an exciting finish. Oregon, I talked about at the top. The only good thing about that was I had Oregon minus 20. And then can we never, ever have Iowa on TV again for any reason? I mean, they are the worst watch in college football, even when they win.
Actually, when they win, it's worse. Because when they win by baseball score. They win like 3-2. I mean, they've actually managed to set back offensive football in college 100 years. You half expect when you watch an Iowa game that they're going to come out with. Do you ever remember seeing the films of the old leather helmet days of football, and they were playing with basically what looked like a rugby ball that they hardly could throw forward? Well, that's what Iowa looks like when they play football. Now, usually you expect that they're going to manage to keep it close and low scoring, muck it up, make it ugly. They couldn't do that here against, yes, it's a five-star recruit quarterback, but this was a freshman that had no experience, and I was shocked at how their defense got carved up. I wasn't shocked that they didn't win, and I wasn't shocked that they didn't cover because they simply can't score. But I was shocked at how many points their defense gave up and how they got shredded.
Flea saying before Fred, is that back in Jesus' time? And did Fred actually know Jesus back when I was a younger man? We played a little poker together.
Weren't you the one that taught him to turn water into wine? Weren't you the one that asked him to do that party trick all the time?
No, he taught me how to go and get money and buy whiskey. So turn money into whiskey.
Okay.
All right. We'll move on to the NFL here in just a sec. But I have to tell you about the Phoenix on Westheimer, another great sponsor of the Falconcast. And you want to go watch Penn State basketball, that's your place to go. But the main thing they're known for is being the best soccer bar in the city. Great food, great staff. You can go catch the Champions League early rounds. And the best part is going and watching Premier League games. And no matter who you support, notice I said supporter, not fan. No matter who you support, you're going to have friends there watching the game. I was there the other day for Man City, and there were a bunch of Man City people in there. So it's a great opportunity to go, and if you want to learn soccer, there's people there that are more than happy to talk to you about it. And they do it to me all the time, and I learn something new every day. So if you get a chance, go check them out. They are on Chuck said, I heard Jesus throws dice. I bet he does. That would be a good one for him. Problem is, he's never going to lose, right? So that's why you can't play against him. You want to talk about loaded dice. All right, let's get on to the NFL because we have a lot to talk about there. So we'll start with the Texans, who very easy win. For once, you didn't have to sweat them. That was good. But they're in a position now, and if you had told me before the season that the Texans would go into week 18 with a chance to make the playoffs, all they have to do is win, I would have called you a New York liar.
I've been impressed. I've got to say, they have been impressive. And is it fair to say that this rebuild is ahead of schedule, Fred? I mean, look at what they've done. They're 9-7 going into week 18, as you said, win and in the playoffs. They found their quarterback, and we're not looking like, well, they may have found their guy. He looks really good. There's a lot to build upon. Quarterback's already a star. And, he'll build upon that, but they definitely got their guy. And, this coaching staff is growing and coming together. They're learning, and they're doing a really good job. It's a good football team. We've talked about it before. We talked about it the last time we got together here. It's a football team on the come. And there's no other way to describe it, with a lot of money to spend in the offseason in free agency, and you want to be smart about it, and plenty of draft capital. Here's a team in the Houston Texans that can build on what they've done, make the playoffs or not, go far. Whatever they do this year, they can build upon that in the offseason. And this is one of those teams that comes out of nowhere and makes the playoffs that I don't see taking a step back next year. You know how oftentimes when you have a team that's perennially losing and they start a rebuild process and they get the benefit of an easy schedule and some other things, all of a sudden they make this leap, they find themselves in the playoffs, and then the next year with a tougher schedule and teams taking them more seriously, they take a step back. I don't see the step back coming here based on the entire situation and how this year's unfolded. I think the Houston Texans are here, and I think they're here for a while.
Well, and I think the other guy that really stood out to me was how much they miss Will Anderson, because he had back-to-back sacks, constant pressure, and a lot of people, if you don't have a bunch of sacks, he's got 7 in his rookie year, and the cool thing is a I mean, he would have had more, I think, if he hadn't been out for 2 games. He might have made double digits. Still might. He could get 3 against Gardner Minshew. Don't think it's going to happen. But the pressure he puts on from that side frees up so many other things. And that's why I say this every week. Just watch the replay and just watch Will Anderson and see the disruption he causes to an offense, and he makes them speed everything up.
Well, with him, it's so much more than just the sack numbers. Because you can find guys that have double-digit sacks, but the pass rush win rate isn't always there. The down-in, down-out pressure isn't always there. With Will Anderson, in addition to the sacks, the pass rush win rate is there, the down-to-down pressure, and the play-to-play impact on the game is absolutely there. Take it, juxtapose this year for him against Kayvon Thibodeau with the Giants, who does have double-digit sacks. I ultimately think is going to be a terrific number 1 pass rusher. But when you look at those other things like pass rush win rate and the pressures and the quarterback hits, it's not there on a play-to-play basis, and there's big chunks of games where Kayvon Thibodeau disappears. You don't see that from Will Anderson, and that's from a rookie. So again, young team with pieces that can get even better, but are already tremendous.
Yeah, and I think free agency is going to be big for them. They could use another, and I do think there's going to be some pretty damn good receivers available that they could go after. But hopefully get Tank Dell back next year. And I also think that shore up some things on defense. Another good pass rusher would be great to have. Safety. But for the most part, I think they've got some good pieces. Now, having said that, I think they're going to have a hard time in Indy. I think this Indianapolis team is one that has just quietly been pretty darn good all year, and especially at home. And so I think it's going to be tough for them. But if you're going to ask me to go out and bet that C.J. Stroud isn't going to go nuts and give them a chance to win, I'm not going to do that.
I'll give you a bet. Take the over. Shane Steichen overs. The Indy's a dead over team, and they're a really bad defense. And you mentioned it. You believe you're pretty confident C.J. Stroud could go nuts and give him a chance to win. To me, this is a dead over game.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't know. I don't. I've been on Shane Steichen overs all year, and it served me well because their defense is brutal.
And I'll give you another thing about the Texans that I like. Nico Collins has become a number 1 receiver. This guy with 1,000 yards who missed time earlier, and has really developed, and better than I thought he would be, no question. And I think that's in part the system, in part he has a real good quarterback, but he gets separation. He doesn't drop the ball, and he makes plays, and he's good after the catch. And I think they found something in Nico Collins, and I think the pieces are coming together. And it should be a good game on Sunday. I'd love to see him get in the playoffs. I really would. I don't think they're going to do anything, but I think it'd be a great experience for all these young guys, and that's one thing you can't duplicate.
Absolutely not. Couldn't agree more there. And I think it would be a great story for a franchise that, let's be fair, Fred, they've been, you live in Houston. I had the benefit of covering Houston sports for a long time remotely from here and have been closer to situations than most people in New York. Texas has been a laughingstock in Houston for a while. City's been down on them. They kind of gave up on them. It's a great story. If they rebound here, get in the playoffs, what a terrific story. And they should be rewarded with a sellout and a jam-packed, raucous NRG stadium. There's no excuse for it.
Well, I think there's a slim chance they could still win the division. Obviously, they have to beat the Colts. But if Jacksonville were to somehow lose, they could still win the division and get a home game. So I think there's a lot there for them. And it'll be a good test, for all these kids to go out there with all this on the line, and let's see what they do. What you don't want to do is see them go out there and get blown out 42-10 or something, which is always a possibility. But I'd like to see what they can do.
I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting for the city of Houston, and I think they should enjoy this because, again, I think they've got a Texans team that they're going to be able to enjoy for a long, Long time.
Yeah, and I think the big difference is Cal McNair is no longer the man out front. And Nick Caserio is no longer the man out front. D'Amico Ryans is the man out front, and fans can get behind that. The other guys, pretty hard to get behind, Cal. And Caserio is just a word salad guy and no charm whatsoever. D'Amico Ryans is, basically Texan all the way. He's easy to like, and he's doing a magnificent job. And little stuff like that, I think, is bringing the fans back.
It's awesome. It's great to see, and it's great to hear. It's well deserved for the people of Houston.
All right,
God bless you, friend.
Sorry, I'm allergic to really good tacos, apparently.
And entertaining sports talk.
Oh yeah. So let's get to some of the other games. That Lions-Cowboys game Saturday night, everybody's still talking about it. Without being on the field and knowing who did what, it's really hard for me to judge. But it sure looks like the Lions got screwed big time.
Looked like both guys reported. I mean, that's what I saw. By the way, and let's talk about the broadcast. The broadcast provided the most confusing explanation of that play. And I'm talking about, the in-studio ref analyst, the ex-referee. Because if you listen to him, he actually states that regardless of if both guys reported, the formation was still illegal, which I don't believe to be the case. If you so his ex that was an ABC game, right? I don't remember who broadcast. So I'm trying to remember the referee that, the ex-NFL referee that provided the referee analysis. But his analysis was more confusing than anything else. Because if both reported, that formation was legal and the Lions got screwed. And as you said, we're not on the field. We can't hear what's being said. But it sure looked to me like two ineligible players reported as eligible because they both went over to the officials at the same time and were right there. That's how I see it.
Well, I don't see what the problem with that would be, because even if he lines up in an ineligible position, they can shift, right? And put him in an eligible position.
Yes, correct. I think the Lions got royally screwed here, and it's interesting to see that same crew is going to get a primetime game this weekend on Saturday.
Spirit says Lions tried so hard to confuse the Cowboys, they confused the refs, and that only one. I don't know. I've got to study that more, because I've heard multiple times when guys have reported and tackles a play on the end, they never throw the ball to them, which is But anyway, it sets Cowboys up pretty well to win the division, because I think you and I talked about this about a month ago. It's like, don't rule out the Cowboys in the division, because the Eagles had a tough schedule coming up, and suddenly, Dallas is in a really good spot. They get Washington this week. They should beat them. Although, as the announcers kept reminding us, well, they lost to them in the last game last year. I don't know what was worse this week, the refs or the announcing in general. But there was just a lot of mistakes.
Hard to disagree with that. And as far as Cowboys, they're in a great position. And the Eagles have limped down the stretch of this season. Fortunately, they're going to get a loss for them. They'll get a soft landing spot in Week 18 with the New York Giants. But the realities are that loss to the Cardinals is crippling. And it's a loss as a double-digit favorite that cannot happen. Right. But the last time we got together, we talked about how they were struggling, how this offense, for all its pieces and talent, had never come together under the new offensive coordinator and those challenges. And we had talked even a month ago how they just were not playing good football for the level of talent that they have. And, they're going to get in the playoffs. They have the talent to make a deep run all the way to the Super Bowl and win it. But when you kind of limp in like this and you're playing really bad football down the stretch, it doesn't set you up well for a deep run into the playoffs. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Eagles get knocked out rather quickly, despite having so much talent, because they've struggled mightily over the last half of the season. They've looked putrid, let's be honest. For the amount of talent they have, they've looked putrid.
Before you trash your Giants too much, though, they've been competitive as hell recently, and really they're just a shanked kick away from upsetting the Rams.
I mean, but I know people like the Rams, and they have pieces, and offensively they're pretty dynamic. Defensively, they've got two terrific interior defensive tackles and not a heck of a lot much else. Let's not anoint the Rams as a great team. They're going to find their way in the playoffs, and they've got the offense to make some noise. But, the Giants played well. I'll give them credit. They played well. As you said, shanked field goal. Giants left points on the field, made a lot of mistakes. You saw that between Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito, Tyrod Taylor is the right quarterback to have on the field.
Right.
But you also saw why Tyrod Taylor is a great backup and a bad starter. He missed some throws that were the difference between winning and losing. You can't pull the string on the 2-point conversion throw to Saquon Barkley. You can't do it.
Right.
And there were several other throws where he just pulled the string, made a bad throw. Guys were wide open. Quality starting quarterbacks make those plays. The Giants, this upcoming draft is going to be very important to them in this rebuild. After making the playoffs last year, injuries and some other things really set them back. This offseason is going to be key for them to see if this coaching staff stays for the long term, this front office stays for the long term, and if this team is actually on the come. A lot of work to do in the offseason, a lot of things they need to fix.
Welcome in, Lamont. Always a pleasure. Happy New Year, buddy. Glad you're here. Another team that I think is in the same boat is the Bears. They get the win over the Falcons. Now they've got the number 1 pick because Carolina has clinched that, and the Bears own their pick. Is Justin Fields your guy? Is your coaching staff going to be there? All of those are going to make for an interesting offseason for the Bears.
Yeah, my guess is Justin Fields is not going to be there. They're going to have a chance to draft a franchise quarterback. They thought they might have stole one in the middle of round 1 with Justin Fields a couple of years back. There's been glimpses, but there's been an awful lot that shows he's not that guy. I could see them doing a reset with their choice, at the top of the draft amongst a trio or quartet of quarterbacks. Now, I think there's an awful lot that has to shake out in this in this off season before we just anoint which one of these quarterbacks is going to be the number 1 overall pick. I think there's a lot to be decided, but I think the Bears are going to reset, and they're going to end up trading Justin Fields. They won't have much leverage. I don't expect them to get a day 1 or day 2 pick for him, but I do expect them to add some draft capital, move on from Justin Fields, and reset at quarterback.
So the Bills get by the Patriots, and they're in a situation now where if they beat Miami, they win the division. There's also scenarios where they could completely miss the playoffs. That game was more of a struggle than I thought it would be. Bills usually at home against a bad team take care of business, but this one was some work for them. And of course, the Dolphins get just destroyed by the Ravens. And other than the Cowboys, when the Dolphins play a good team, this is what happens. So, how do you see that one shaking out?
Bills Dolphins. I mean, I'll say it like this: I think the Bills win this game. This is a Bills team that nobody wants to see right now. Again, they were beset by injuries early in the season and struggles. This was a team who limped, the early portion of the season the way Philadelphia's limped through the late portion. The Bills limped through the early portion. Some poor efforts, dealt with injuries, lost some games they shouldn't have lost. They've turned on the Jets down the stretch. And and as you know, as the playoff with the playoff picture murky earlier a few weeks back, all you ever heard, it was hard to disagree. If the Bills find a way into the playoffs, nobody's going to want to see them. And I think that's absolutely the case. I think they're the second best team in the AFC right now behind the Ravens. I think they're that good. They have found their rhythm. The change at offensive coordinator to Joe Brady has worked. They've taken on a different character offensively, and it's helped a defense that is without an awful lot of parts right now due to injury. And I think this is a very dangerous Bills team that is going to get the best of Miami in Miami because, as you mentioned, Miami's great at running the track meet and dominating lesser teams. When they come up against quality competition, they fall short. The Bills are quality competition. They need to win this game. They almost got trapped last week, and I'll be quite honest with you. Had it not been for all those Patriot turnovers, they probably would have got trapped last week. Looking ahead to this one, there's no trap here. I like the Bills, and I think they roll.
I am real interested in this Steelers-Ravens game because the Ravens probably are going to rest everybody. They have nothing to play for. The last thing you want to do is get somebody hurt. And the Steelers still have a shot. And I think that this is a really good spot for Pittsburgh to cover the spread.
Absolutely. And again, these are the type of things, let's get into a little betting talk here as we're wont to do. These are the type of spots we look for in Week 18. This is one where a lot of times it doesn't matter what your model says. If one team has nothing to play for and one team has something to play for, you better think twice before you bet on the better team with nothing to play for because, as you said, they're resting everybody, don't want to get anybody hurt, and they want to get themselves ready for the playoffs. Steelers are fighting for their playoff lives. They're going to bring everything they got. So, I think that's a good spot for the Steelers.
All right, one more before we let you go, and we'll bring Tracy in. What are your thoughts on the Chiefs? I think it's as simple as they have a horrible receiving crew and guys that run bad routes and can't hold the football. And sometimes on a 3rd and 6, when you need a big play, they make stupid mistakes. And, yes, they've had some guys step up, but not much. And Mahomes still looks like Mahomes to me. It just looks like he doesn't have anybody to throw to other than Kelsey. And it's easy when Kelsey's the only guy for teams to triple team him.
You said it perfectly. Hard to argue. As a result, it's now become a team that's built around that wins with their defense. Steve Spagnuolo and company, that's one of the best defense. And nobody thinks of defense when they think of the Chiefs. But very quietly, they have assembled one of the best defenses in all of the National Football League. And if you look at the Chiefs' success, it really doesn't boil down to what they do on offense. It boils down to what they do on defense. Because, to be honest with you, outside of a 41-point explosion against Chicago in Week 3, they've only scored 30 points twice. Their next two biggest outputs are 31 points against the Chargers and 31 points against the Raiders. Otherwise, this has been a very pedestrian offense that's just not putting up a lot of points. And as you said, Mahomes is still Mahomes. But, if you're throwing to the weak sisters of the poor and guys who can't make the right decisions on option routes, who are making the wrong reads on these option routes, you're going to get what you're getting from the Chiefs offensively this year. So they'll go in the playoffs as far as their defense can take them because their offense ain't going to take them all that far unless they hitch their wagon Isaiah Pacheco, who is a hell of a running back and is not used enough.
All right. Spirit J says the Cowboys and the Dolphins, the same team. Yeah, I mentioned that a couple times. There's that group of teams that I just don't think could be good teams. And, Dallas and Miami are both that team. All right, Joe, great stuff as always, man. Appreciate you stepping in. Hope you have a great 2024, and I'll probably talk to you later this week about some other stuff we got going. So,
awesome stuff, Freddie. Right back at you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Now, we're going to bring in our good friend, SEC Tracy. I hope you had a great New Year's, and it was kind of fun watching some stuff. Before we get to the college things, though, you got to feel pretty good about your 49ers locking up the number 1 seed.
I do, but damn, they pissed me off against the Ravens. I was livid. I was a little bit drunk too. So luckily, I don't remember a lot of the game. I had to go back and watch parts of it, but yeah, they did lock it up. I'm pleased about that. So they get to rest everybody. They need to get healthy because when they're healthy, they're going to be tough to beat. And I still think they can beat the Ravens despite that output.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those things where the Ravens are playing at a very high level right now, and so were the 49ers, but they had a bad game. And that happens, and we've seen it in the past where they bounce back. And, I think those are going to be your Super Bowl favorites for now. I do think there's a couple of snakes in both conference that could sneak in. Mm-hmm. But the Ravens just they look fantastic right now, but we've seen this before from them.
They lost to they barely beat the Rams. The Rams are a good team though. They're very hot. But the Ravens have had duds too, so they just are hot at the right time, and they had some lucky bounces to get those interceptions.
And until they do something in the playoffs, it's fair to doubt them.
Yeah, I agree. But how wonderful was yesterday and this weekend of college football?
Oh, it was awesome. I was talking earlier in the show. I pretty much stayed home, all day yesterday to watch football. And Sunday, I went and watched the Texans game over at the neighborhood bar. And then the rest of the day, I just spent home watching NFL. And I loved it. And even some of the lesser games yesterday.
Well, the LSU game was interesting just because their defense sucks donkey balls. They let Wisconsin look like a world beater on offense. But, it was a slow start for Nussmeier, but he came through and had an MVP for performance in the game. And they won it by the skin of their teeth.
Well, what I liked about him was he seemed to get better as the game went on, right?
He did.
He really seemed to start adjusting and learning on the fly. And, man, that kid's got an arm on him.
He does. And I got into it with some LSU fans. And, gosh, just because you say you want to see a little more accuracy out of a kid, because that's been his knock. He's had a 60% completion percentage coming into this game. He upped it to almost 69, but he floats his balls a lot. And that needs to be corrected because in SEC play, that's going to be a pick or it's going to be a catch that should have been made for a touchdown that you have to settle for a field goal.
A couple of other SEC teams that looked impressive on Saturday. Obviously, what Georgia did to Florida State is illegal.
That's just not fair.
It's illegal in most states. And then
yes,
and
even prison.
Yeah. You get more years for that. But I thought Ole Miss looked really good against Penn State as well. And
they did. Ole Miss, they're paying NIL. They're going to be something to be reckoned with next year.
All right, let's get to the meaningful games because I told this to Joe earlier that I never want to see Iowa on TV again. And honestly, it's
insane. Well, they won't be, Fred, because of the new Big Ten. They're not going to be.
Oh, they're going to find some way to win 8 games, 10-7, and then we have to watch them. But let's start with Alabama, Michigan, and I want to get your thoughts on it because I mentioned at the top of the show I thought Michigan was the better team, but the game wound up coming down to the last play because special teams.
They're special teams. Yeah, I predicted before the game even started that Michigan would win. I thought the line of scrimmage would be won by Michigan because I have seen Alabama's offensive line be complete shit, and they were shit compared to Michigan. But then Alabama corrected themselves a little bit. But if you take away the 7 points from that TD and also the extra point, I apologize, I'm at work. It wasn't close. Michigan owned that game, but because of their mistakes, they almost won it.
And one of the things we talked about earlier was the play calling on near the end of the game. You're calling a play that looks like it had 0% chance. Now, in his defense, the snap was bad. Then he trips over his offensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
But really, you're running into the teeth of the Michigan defense, what they do best.
It's like all I could think about during that moment is, do you remember the play LSU ran for the 2-point conversion that beat Bama? Why are they not running something like that? Shift Milrow out, get the tight end out, and it's a simple, fast completion. You make the defense react to you. Instead, all they did was just push, and they won the game.
Well, I say this all the time. Even the best coaches will panic or choke at the end of a game. And
this was not Saban's finest game.
No,
not by a long shot. He did coach his team up, and I think they had their best performance of the year against Georgia to get there. But they were who they were all year, Fred. They were who they were all year. They sucked at their O-line. They made mistakes that they shouldn't be making, being a Bama team, and that's who they were. And just for one game, Georgia had a down week and let them play the perfect game to get there. But the better team won.
Yeah, and I think in both cases, I think the same thing with Washington.
Absolutely.
Missed extra point, and they had their issues on
the
special
fumble,
teams.
the muff punt that allowed Texas to hang around. Now, I have to tell you, I was stunned at the end of that game that it was even in jeopardy because the injury timeout caught. Imagine if Texas would have won that game, the outrage that would be, and that poor kid who was hurt, how he would feel because his injury allowed the clock to stop. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they need to look at doing something different because that did allow Texas to drive the field. And we know Washington's back end is not the best. But I said this in a tweet before the game that it's going to be really hard to slow those wide receivers down because they're elite, just like LSU had in 2019. These are NFL dudes playing against college kids.
And Michael Penix was just through the roof. And
ridiculous.
Yeah, he basically was putting up Joe Burrow numbers in that game.
He put up numbers that did rival that, and the placement of his ball was just, I mean, every time you looked, it was only where his guy could catch it, and damn, did they catch everything. They caught everything. It was unbelievable to watch. I knew Texas's DBs would struggle against that. I just had no idea that Washington's O-line would be so good against Texas's D-line.
Well, and I think that's going to be
they nullified them.
Yeah, well, and that's going to be a key against Michigan.
Michigan. Oh, well, they're going to have a much tougher test against Michigan to do that. Penix may have to use some of, even though he doesn't really do it much, his scramble ability to at least give himself a little more time to evade a rush.
But the one thing about Washington that I love is those receivers, you mentioned them, but Odunze especially, he might be better than Harrison Jr. in the NFL. I mean, that guy gets open, he catches everything, he's got great size. I mean, he's just a stud.
It reminds me of someone I know. Oh, Chase, Jamar Chase, a lot like that. Yeah, good route runner, gets open, is open even when it's a contested ball. Because that's what you want. Joe Burrow would just throw it up and a 50-50 ball. Jamar Chase would catch it. Yeah. Those are the guys that make a lot of money in the NFL, and they're going to make quarterbacks look really good.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that's going to be a fun matchup between Washington's O-line and Michigan's D-line. Mm-hmm. And the Washington defense, the thing that worries me about them is they've got talent. And, but even their best, like Muhammad, to me, is one of the better corners in But
he's short.
He's short. And he fell down on a 42-yard pass. That's a guy who's supposed to stop that.
No, Michigan's going to score, but I don't have a whole lot of faith in McCarthy. I'm just going to say that right now. How this guy was even in the Heisman running, just because you're on a winning team, I don't know. I'm not sold on him at all. And if you're just basing this off quarterbacks, Penix by far. And that's what won the game against Texas was Penix. He was a difference maker.
Well, in McCarthy's defense, he played really well all year until he got hurt. And the last month he hasn't been very good. He looked healthy, and plus he's got Blake Corum, who is a difference maker.
Whereas Washington's running back is injured.
Yeah. So
I don't know what they're going to do. Not that they need to run, but they're going to have to do something to keep Michigan's pass rush at bay a little bit to give Penix some time to throw the ball. But I think that Washington has a chance.
yeah, I think they do too. If they play like the team they were at the beginning of the season, I think they match up with Michigan. But I also, I don't know. I've got to do a little more research on this, just from a gambling perspective. I don't know which direction I'm going, because I do think there's some matchups that really favor Washington, and I do think there is some softness in that Michigan secondary. But you've got to have time to throw the ball.
You have to.
Yeah. I'm sure you loved all the conversation about how this is why the Heisman shouldn't be voted on until after the bowl games, right?
They can all suck it, Fred. They can all suck it. The guy in the moment won it, and he would have played yesterday if he would have been in a bowl game, and he would have put up similar numbers. So whatever, I just shrugged my shoulders at that. You saw the difference in LSU early in that football game.
Oh, yeah.
James Daniels. It was clear as day.
But it is going to be an adjustment for them because obviously you don't have the running skills here. But you're more pocket passing. I mean, I think they'll be fine next year. I'd say I like the way he kind of just developed as the game went on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's just reps. You have to have reps to get better practice. I hope he works in the off season to get more accurate. That's the one knock I have on the kid. He's big. He could elude pressure. That's what you need.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be pretty good. We'll see. I mean, he's going to have talent around him again. But I like that Neighbors played so he could get the record. That was pretty cool.
He got the record.
Yeah.
I think Thomas leaves for the NFL. Obviously, I would never want that kid to hold himself back. He's going to be a first-round pick. But I do think they have Lacey coming back. They have wide receivers. They're getting the top-rated wide receiver and running back in their recruiting class. They stole an edge rusher from Aggie. So, if BK stays, that's the whole thing. There's a big rumor going around that he's going to leave for Michigan when Harbaugh leaves. I don't know if he will. That's a big move for his family again within just, 2 years?
Yeah.
So we'll see. And he has a good thing going. He's keeping home talent in the state of Louisiana. It's a big damn deal. What about your Cougs, Fred?
Well, we're a basketball school, so there's that. I like the Fritz hire, but he is 63 years old, so I don't know. And then that's not old, but I mean, how long are they going to give him, and how long is it going to take him to become competitive? And so far, the transfers look like all Tulane guys, so it's not like they're out there getting killing the portal or anything.
Yeah.
And I think they need a quarterback, but we'll see.
Yeah, didn't their quarterback leave?
No,
Or
I think he's still there, but they need somebody to compete with him.
Okay, yeah.
Because he's not good.
Yeah.
I would hold on to my Dr. Pepper and let him go. But yeah. But we'll see. I think it's interesting with the Big 12. I really like what the conference is going to look like. I think somebody can take over. And I think Utah has a really good chance to make a statement. And I think Kansas State will have, a good team again. So we'll see. I think the thing about Utah is they're such a great home team, but now they're going to have to take some longer trips into some different places. So I don't know how that's going to work out for them. I love Arizona going into next year. I think that's a team that, boy, I hammered them against Oklahoma in the bowl game too. And I think Oklahoma State's always right there. But in the end, if you want a team that's going to, be the media market and be, I think Colorado too with Prime. That's another one.
You're going to get at least one, maybe two teams in the playoff next year.
Yeah, I would think so. But I really, would like to see UH become one of those leaders because of the media market, because of the.
You know what it takes, Fred? It takes money. It takes NIL.
Well,
they
got it. They just don't have Aggie money.
Yeah. Well, Aggie's team is, they're losing guys left and right. They're looking a lot like the LSU team that Coach O left us. When you get a new coach, you're going to have that, but there is massive departures in Aggie land. They're going to get some recruits, but their team is going to take him a couple years to get it back on track.
Yeah, I miss the days when Coach O was taking pictures with co-eds in bed.
Or sending DMs to people that you know.
Yeah.
No, but talking to Texas fans, they want yours back. But I don't know. It's like, I don't know. Would you let Manning go? What would you do?
Well, yours keeps saying he's coming back, but I think he's a first-round pick. Now,
do you got his long balls, man? They just float up in the air forever.
Yeah, but I mean, he's got enough of an arm. He really improved to this year, but I also think that quarterback class is going to be really interesting because, as we've talked about,
that's why I think he comes back, because I think there's too much competition in this class in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't think you worry about that. If you know you're going to go in the first round,
I just don't think
an agent, you're not going to think that way. Nobody does. I mean, they're going to think they're good enough to go top 5, and they're going to go with what their agents tell them. And yeah, I mean, Caleb Williams was a dead mortal lock number 1 a year ago.
But he's not. Yeah.
Are we sure about that?
Yeah.
And I think Jaden Stock's going to go up. I've been saying Michael Penix is going to go a lot higher than people think, and he should.
Well, especially if he beats Michigan. He may actually be the top guy. The thing that holds people back with him is his knee injuries.
Yeah. But I think he's got a chance to, and maybe the medicals don't bear that out, but Drake May, all these guys, I think have a chance to go pretty high. But I think Quinn Ewers would be right there with them. Maybe on the tail end of that group, but
yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I just think Manning's going to have to really prove himself. He came from we talked about this. He came from a very small high school, very small. So his level of competition is going to escalate tremendously going to the SEC. Even guys like Carson Beck, who, he was a junior, struggled to adapt to SEC play because it comes at you so fast.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting for Texas and Oklahoma going in there next year. It's a step up.
They're big. Michigan plays Texas on their schedule.
Yeah. But I like that. See, and I like that about with the 12-team playoff, the fact that we're going to get Michigan, Texas early in the season. I think that's great.
You get Georgia in Texas too. I mean, there are some massive games across this country next year with the realignment of everything. It's going to be so exciting each week. It's going to feel like the NFL every week. It's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, and that's I didn't want 12 teams. I thought 8 was enough, but I also wanted Scarlett Johansson, so this is what I get. But I'm excited by it. We'll see what happens. I think it's if he gives me more good games early in the season and less Alabama versus Stetson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No one wants that. I'm just so happy they got bumped out. And did you see all the trolling Florida State players did?
No.
It was freaking awesome. Google that. It's hilarious. They were trolling Alabama big time. And they have every right to. They thought they deserved to be there, even though we know their team was lesser without Travis. But I felt so bad for the team that actually did play for getting pounded that bad by Georgia. It was awful to watch. Awful to watch. These young kids, playing for their team. They didn't opt out. They stayed with their guys, and they got their asses handed to them on national TV.
Yeah, and that was embarrassing. But I also don't think they belonged in there in the first place. I think Alabama did, and the reason is we got two great semifinal games for the first time.
The best that we've had.
Yeah,
they're not a blowout. I think everyone was excited that they didn't feel it was going to be a blowout.
Yeah, and we had 2 games come down to the very last play. You can't ask for more than that.
I was up till 1:30 last night. It's ridiculous, They need to start that second one sooner, man. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
these poor people on the East Coast were up till 2:30.
Well, what else are they going to do?
Nothing.
Now, I was talking to Joe about that earlier. I think today should be a holiday too, because everybody goes at it on New Year's Eve. And then you stay up all night watching football on New Year's Day after you started drinking again.
Yeah.
I know
I
there's a
did
lot.
drink 2 bottles of champagne yesterday, so
Yeah,
both of which I drank during the Tiger game.
I didn't drink in the
Yeah.
afternoon, but my neighbor brought over some whiskey for the evening games, and
There you go.
yeah, it was pretty cool. But all right, well, we'll find something to talk about next week. Probably your 49ers. I don't know.
Freaking football.
Yeah, well, we'll talk more about the championship game because
Absolutely.
that'll be next Monday. And good stuff as always. Appreciate you coming on, and I'll be in touch. But love to have you on next Monday, and we'll break it down in great detail.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. Have a good one.
All right, you have a great one. All right, so that's our buddy Tracy. She really knows her stuff, man. I think at some point, if she wanted to, somebody a lot bigger and better than me could poach her. And she's just gotten really polished, and enjoy having her on. All right, guys. Well, Thursday we'll have AJ. It will be a lot of NFL gambling. We'll break down that championship game as well. And I know we'll start shifting a little bit towards college basketball because, as you know, AJ makes you a lot of money on that. I'll have a lot more hockey for you. I want to thank all our great sponsors, Midtown Bar and Grill, where we are every Monday, except for today when it's not Monday, and the Phoenix on Westheimer. I want to thank Dr. Linville for always being great. Lawyer Dave, who is celebrating the Big Blue winning, and Piper's Plumbing. We've got a bunch of new sponsors that are going to be jumping on here pretty quickly. So a lot of cool stuff coming, including expanding the network. We're going to start our entertainment movie writing show pretty soon, and with English Rich. And I've got a couple other little things up my sleeve. So stay tuned. 2024 is going to be a great year. I'm so glad to see 2023 in the rearview mirror, and hope I never have a year like that again. And I hope we all have a great year together. I appreciate and love each and every one of you for tuning in. So until Thursday, stay sportsy, Gulf Coast badasses.